Captain Jake Morrison stared at the control screens in front of him. The stars looked peaceful, but he knew better. This part of space was dangerous. The enemy ships came here often. "Sir, I'm getting something on the scanner," said Lieutenant Amy Carter. She sat at the communications desk, her fingers moving fast over the buttons. "It's big. Really big." Jake walked over to look at her screen. A red dot showed up, much larger than their own ship. His heart started beating faster. "How big are we talking about?" "At least 10 times our size, Captain," said Sergeant Ben Hughes from the weapons station. "It's one of their main battleships." The enemy was called the Zephyrians. They looked like giant insects with hard shells and many arms. The war had been going on for 3 years now. Many good people had died on both sides. Jake's ship, the UES Guardian, was small and fast. It was made for looking around and gathering information, not for fighting big battles. But sometimes you had to fight anyway. "They've seen us," Amy said. Her voice was tight with worry. "They're moving this way," Jake thought quickly. They could try to run, but the enemy ship was probably faster. They could try to hide, but there was nowhere to go in empty space. Fighting seemed like the only choice, even if it was a bad one. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake said into the ship's communication system. "We have an enemy ship coming toward us. Everyone get ready for battle." The ship suddenly shook hard. Lights flashed red all around them. The Zephyrians had fired their weapons. "Shields are down to 60%, Ben called out. "Return fire?" "Do it," Jake said. Their weapons shot out toward the enemy ship, but it was like throwing rocks at a mountain. The Zephyrian ship barely slowed down. It came closer and closer. Another blast hit them. This time Jake could smell smoke. Sparks flew from broken control panels. The lights went out for a few seconds, then came back on dim and flickering. "Engines are damaged," Amy reported. "We can't run." "Weapons are offline," Ben added. Jake felt sick in his stomach. This was how it would end. His crew would die because of his choices. He thought about his sister Lisa, who had died when the Zephyrians first attacked Earth. At least he would see her again soon. "Captain, they're not firing anymore," Amy said, sounding surprised. Jake looked at the main screen. The huge enemy ship was right next to them now. Metal arms reached out from its sides like the legs of a spider. They grabbed onto the Guardian and held it tight. "They want to board us," Jake realized. "They want prisoners." Heavy footsteps echoed through the ship's halls. The sound of metal cutting through metal came from the main door. The Zephyrians were coming inside. "Everyone stay calm," Jake told his crew. "Do what they say. Maybe we can live through this." The door exploded inward. Smoke filled the room. Through the smoke came shapes that looked like nightmares. The Zephyrians were tall, with bodies covered in shiny hard shells that looked like armor. They had 4 arms each, and their faces were like insects with big black eyes. They carried weapons that glowed with blue light. These weapons pointed at Jake and his crew. One of the aliens stepped forward. This one wore fancier armor with gold designs on it. It was clearly the leader. When it spoke, a small device on its chest turned the alien words into English. "You will surrender," the device said in a flat mechanical voice. "You will come with us." Jake raised his hand slowly. "We surrender. Don't hurt my crew." The leader made a sound like clicking. Other Zephyrians moved around the room, checking corners and looking at the broken equipment. That's when Jake saw something that made his heart stop. Behind one of the control panels, something small was hiding. At first, Jake thought it might be a piece of equipment. But then it moved, and he saw what it really was. It was a young Zephyrian, much smaller than the adults. Its shell was lighter in color, almost see-through. The little creature was shaking with fear. It had been hurt somehow. One of its small arms hung at a strange angle. None of the adult Zephyrians had seen it yet. They were too busy looking at the humans and checking the ship for threats. Jake stared at the young alien. It was just a child, he realized. A scared, hurt child that was hiding while the adults fought their war. Suddenly, one of the damaged support beams above started to crack. The battle had weakened it, and now it was about to fall. Jake looked up and saw it breaking apart. In a few seconds, it would crash down right where the young Zephyrian was hiding. Jake didn't think. He just moved. He dove forward, pushing himself between the falling beam and the small alien. The metal was heavy and sharp. When it hit him, pain shot through his whole body. His leg twisted under the weight, and he heard something crack. But the young Zephyrian was safe underneath him. The room went completely quiet. Every adult Zephyrian stared at Jake in shock. The leader's weapon lowered slightly. The small alien looked up at Jake with its big, dark eyes. It made a soft sound like a hurt animal. Jake tried to smile, even though the pain in his leg was terrible. "It's okay, little one," he whispered. "You're safe now." The leader stepped closer. Its forearms moved in ways that Jake couldn't understand, but somehow the movements seemed important. When it spoke, its voice sounded different than before. "You protected the youngling," the translation device said. "You saved my offspring." Jake looked up at the tall alien leader. Even through the pain, he could see something like surprise in those dark eyes. "I couldn't let a child get hurt," Jake said. "It doesn't matter what species you are. Children should be protected." The leader was quiet for a long time. The other Zephyrians waited, their weapons still ready, but no longer pointing at the humans. Finally, the leader spoke again. "I am War Commander Thyssera. The youngling is called Dzilki. She is my daughter." Jake felt his vision getting blurry from the pain, but he forced himself to stay conscious. "Is she hurt?" Thyssera moved her daughter aside gently and checked her small body. "Minor injuries only. You took the worst of the impact." "Good," Jake said, and then everything went black. When Jake woke up, he was not on his ship anymore. The room around him was strange, with walls that curved like the inside of an egg. The pain in his leg was less now, but he could tell it had been badly hurt. Amy and Ben were in the room next to his, behind a wall he could see through but not touch. They looked worried but unhurt. War Commander Thyssera stood near his bed. In her forearms she held the small Zephyrian child. Dzilki looked much better now. Her hurt arm was wrapped up, and her shell had a healthy shine to it. "You are awake," Thyssera said. "My medical staff has repaired your leg. You will walk again." "Thank you," Jake said. He tried to sit up, but found that he couldn't move very far. "Are my crew members okay?" "They are unharmed. They will remain so, as long as you cooperate." Jake nodded. He had expected this. "What do you want from us?" Thyssera was quiet for a moment. The small alien in her arms made soft clicking sounds and pointed at Jake. "Dzilki remembers you," the war commander said. "She does not understand why an enemy would protect her. Neither do I." "Because she's a child," Jake said simply. "And children deserve to be safe." Thyssera's head tilted to one side, like she was thinking hard about something very confusing. "We will speak more later," she said finally. "Rest now. Tomorrow you will answer many questions." As the alien leader left with her daughter, Jake heard the little one make more clicking sounds. Through the translation device, he caught a few words. "Nice human. Saved me. Thank you." Jake closed his eyes and wondered what would happen next. He had saved one small life, but now his own life and the lives of his crew hung in the balance. Outside his strange new prison, he could hear the sounds of the enormous Zephyrian ship moving through space, carrying them all toward an uncertain future. Jake had been in the alien prison for 5 days when Thyssera came to visit him again. The war commander always brought her daughter with her. Dzilki would stand close to the clear wall that separated Jake from the rest of the ship, looking at him with those big dark eyes. "Your leg is healing well," Thyssera said, watching Jake walk around his small room. "Our doctors are very good." "Yes, they are," Jake agreed. The alien medical treatment was amazing. His leg felt almost normal now. "Thank you for taking care of me. You saved my daughter's life. It is the least I can do." Thyssera paused. "But I still do not understand why." This was always how their conversation started. The alien commander could not understand why a human would risk his life for a Zephyrian child. Jake had tried to explain it many times. "I told you before," Jake said. I couldn't watch a child get hurt. Any child. But we are enemies, Thaisara replied. My people have killed your people. Your people have killed mine. That doesn't change anything. War is between adults who choose to fight. Children don't choose anything. They just want to be safe and loved. Silky pressed her small hand against the clear wall. Jake walked over and put his own hand on the other side, matching her position. The little alien made happy clicking sounds. She likes you, Thaisara observed. This is very strange. Zephyrian young are usually afraid of other species. Maybe she knows I won't hurt her, Jake suggested. Perhaps. The war commander seemed to think about this. Tell me about human children. Are they like our young? Jake smiled, thinking about his memories. In some ways, yes. They're curious about everything. They like to play and learn new things. They need their parents to protect them and teach them about the world. You speak as if you know children well. I had a younger sister, Jake said, quietly. Her name was Lisa. She was killed in the first attack on New Denver. Thaisara went very still. I am sorry. Losing young is the worst pain there is. Yes, it is. Jake looked at Silky, who was drawing shapes on the wall with her finger. But that's exactly why I couldn't let anything happen to your daughter. No parent should have to feel that pain. You lost family to my people, yet you saved my child. Revenge doesn't bring back the dead, Jake said. It just makes more death. Thaisara was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke again. In our culture, the young are sacred. They are born rarely, and each one is precious beyond measure. To save a youngling, especially the child of a high-ranking family, is the greatest honor possible. I didn't do it for honor, Jake said. I did it because it was right. This concept of right that you speak of, it is difficult for us to understand. We think in terms of the hive, the group. What benefits all Zephyrians is good. What harms us is bad. But you speak of something beyond that. Jake tried to find the right words. I think there are some things that are right or wrong, no matter who you are or where you come from. Protecting innocent life is one of those things. Even the innocent. Life of your enemies? Especially then. It's easy to protect those you love. It takes real courage to protect those you have reason to hate. Tzilki made a sound and pointed at Jake. Thaisara listened to her daughter's clicking and chirping. After a moment, she looked surprised. What did she say? Jake asked. She says you smell like kindness. It is hard to translate. We can sense emotions through chemical signals. She says your scent is warm and safe. I'm glad she feels safe. This is causing problems for me, Thaisara admitted. My officers want me to execute you. They say you are dangerous because you make us question our beliefs about humans. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. And what do you think? I think they may be right. You are dangerous. But not in the way they mean. She looked at her daughter, who was now sitting by the wall, making soft sounds like she was singing. You are dangerous because you make us think that perhaps we do not understand humans as well as we believed. Maybe you don't. Maybe we don't understand you either. 3 years of war have taught us that humans are violent and unpredictable. You fight with fury, even when you cannot win. You destroy rather than surrender. You care nothing for civilians if they are not your own species. That's not true, Jake said firmly. Some humans might act that way, but not all of us. Just like I'm sure not all Zephyrians are the same. No, Thaisara agreed slowly. We are not all the same. But our leaders believe humans cannot be trusted. They say you will always choose violence over peace. Then why haven't you killed me yet? Thaisara looked at him for a long moment. Because you are the first human I have met who chose to protect rather than destroy. And because... She glanced at her daughter. Because Tzilki is my only remaining child. I had 3 others. All died in this war. Jake's heart ached for her. I'm so sorry. They were killed when your forces attacked our colony on Zerion 7. Your people said it was a military target, but young ones died there too. I didn't know, Jake said quietly. I'm sorry for your loss. No parent should have to bury their children. Yet you saved the last one. Why would you care about the grief of an enemy? Because grief is grief. Pain is pain. It doesn't matter what species you are. When you lose someone you love, it hurts the same way. Thisara stared at him. You really believe this? Yes, I do. My advisors tell me you are trying to trick me. That humans are skilled liars who will say anything to survive. I can't prove I'm telling the truth, Jake said. You'll have to decide for yourself what to believe. If you are lying, you are very good at it. If I were lying, would I have risked my life for your daughter? Thisara had no answer for that. Over the following days, their conversations continued. Jake learned about Zephyrian society. Their entire culture was built around protecting and raising the young. Adults live for hundreds of years, but children were born only rarely. Sometimes decades would pass between births in a family. This is why we fight so hard, Thisara explained. Every young one lost is a tragedy that echoes for generations. Then why did this war start? Jake asked. Your people wanted the mineral rights to our outer colonies. We refused. You attacked anyway. That's not how I heard it. We were told you attacked our mining ships first. Perhaps we both heard different versions of the truth. Jake was beginning to understand that this war, like most wars, was more complicated than either side wanted to admit. During one visit, Silky did something that surprised everyone. She had been practicing human words that Jake taught her. When Thisara wasn't looking, the little alien pressed a button on the wall that controlled the barrier. The clear wall disappeared. For a moment, nobody moved. Jake could have tried to escape or fight. Thisara could have called for guards. Instead, Silky walked into Jake's cell and held up her small arms. Jake carefully picked her up. She was lighter than he expected, and her shell felt warm and smooth. She made happy sounds and touched his face with her tiny fingers. She trusts you completely, Thisara said, sounding amazed. The feeling is mutual, Jake replied, gently setting the child down. Thisara reactivated the barrier, but something had changed. The wall was still there, but it felt less like a prison and more like protection. I have been thinking about what you said, the war commander told him, about right and wrong being the same for all species. And, if this is true, then perhaps some of the things we have done in this war were wrong, and perhaps some of the things your people have done were wrong too. Probably, Jake agreed. War makes people do terrible things, but it doesn't have to stay that way forever. My mother, the Empress, wants to see you. She arrives tomorrow. Jake felt his stomach drop. What will happen then? I do not know. The Empress will decide your fate. And mine. Yours? I have kept you alive against the wishes of my officers. I have allowed you to speak with my daughter. Some call this treason. I'm sorry. I never wanted to cause trouble for you. You did not cause anything. I made my own choices. Thisara looked at her daughter, who was drawing pictures on the wall with her finger. But I do not regret them. That night, Jake lay awake thinking about what would happen when the Empress arrived. He had saved one small life, but now it seemed like his actions would have consequences far beyond what he had imagined. In the cell next to his, Amy and Ben were sleeping. They had been quiet and patient during their captivity, trusting Jake to find a way out of this situation. He hoped he wouldn't let them down. Outside his window, Jake could see other Zephyrian ships joining their convoy. More and more alien vessels appeared until they were surrounded by an entire fleet. The Empress was coming, and she was bringing an army with her. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind kept racing. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. He just hoped that whatever happened, little Silky would be safe. She had already lost too much to this war. They all had. The Empress never came. Instead, Jake woke up to alarms blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in his cell, and he could feel the entire vessel shaking. Through his window, he saw stars spinning as the ship turned sharply. "What's happening?" Amy called from her cell. Before Jake could answer, Thaisara appeared at his door. She looked worried and moved faster than usual. Silky was with her, clinging to her mother's arm with all four of her small hands. "We are in danger," Thaisara said quickly. "A space storm, bigger than any we have seen before. It appeared without warning." Jake had heard of space storms before. They were areas where gravity and energy went crazy, tearing apart anything that got caught in them. Ships could be crushed or thrown light years off course. "How bad is it?" Jake asked. "Bad enough that we may all die together," Thaisara replied. "Our navigation systems are failing. The storm is pulling us in." Another violent shake threw everyone against the walls. Silky made scared sounds and Thaisara held her tighter. "I may be able to help," Jake said suddenly. "You? How?" "I'm an engineer. I designed navigation systems before I became a ship captain. If you let me see your equipment, maybe I can fix it." Thaisara stared at him. "You would help us? Even though we are your captors?" "We're all going to die if this ship gets torn apart," Jake pointed out. "I don't want that to happen to anyone, especially not to Silky." For a moment, Thaisara didn't move. Jake could see her thinking, weighing her options. Around them, the ship continued to shake and groan under the storm's pressure. "Very well," she said finally. "But you will be guarded at all times." "I understand." Thaisara deactivated the cell barriers. Jake, Amy, and Ben were escorted through the ship's corridors by 4 armed guards. Jake had never seen the inside of a Zephyrian vessel before. Everything was curved and organic-looking, like they were walking through the inside of a giant living creature. The engineering section was huge and filled with equipment that Jake didn't recognize. Alien technicians worked frantically at control panels, their many arms moving in complex patterns. But Jake could see the basic principles behind their technology. Energy flowed from here to there, systems connected in logical ways, just like human ships but with different designs. "Show me the navigation controls," Jake said. A Zephyrian engineer led him to a large panel covered with glowing symbols. Jake studied it carefully. The symbols meant nothing to him, but he could trace the flow of information through the circuits below. "Here's your problem," he said after a few minutes. "This connection is damaged." He pointed to a section where sparks were flying. "The storm's energy is overloading your systems faster than they can reset." "Can you fix it?" Thaisara asked. "Maybe. But I'll need to reroute power through secondary systems. It's risky. If I'm wrong, we could lose all power." "And if you do?" "Nothing. We'll definitely lose all power when the main system burns out completely." Another massive shake rocked the ship. This time some of the lights went out and didn't come back on. "Do it," Thaisara ordered. Jake rolled up his sleeves and got to work. The Zephyrian tools were strange in his hands, but tools were tools. Amy and Ben helped by holding equipment and following his instructions. Even some of the alien engineers began working with them, pointing out important connections and power sources. "Try this," suggested one of the Zephyrians, offering Jake a different tool. "It will work better for that type of connection." "Thanks," Jake said, accepting the help. "You're right, this is much easier." As they worked together, Jake noticed something interesting. Despite being different species, engineers were engineers. They all wanted to solve problems and make things work. Language and appearance didn't matter when you were trying to save everyone's lives. "There," Jake said finally, wiping sweat from his face. "Try the navigation now." The Zephyrian pilot activated the controls. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's movement became smoother, more controlled. "It's working," the pilot announced. "We're breaking free of the storm's pull." Cheers went up from the alien crew. Jake felt hands patting his back, some human hands from Amy and Ben, but also alien hands from the Zephyrian engineers who had worked beside him. "You saved us," Thaisara said, looking at Jake with something like amazement. "You saved hundreds of lives." "We all did it together," Jake replied. "Your people helped too, we made a good team. But you could have let us die. You could have sat in your cell and done nothing. We are your enemies." "No," Jake said, looking around at the Zephyrian engineers who were now smiling at him. Right now, we're just people trying to survive. Enemy is just a word. It doesn't have to mean anything if we don't want it to. Zilke had been quiet during the whole crisis, staying close to her mother. Now she walked over to Jake and held up a small drawing she had made. It showed stick figures, some that looked human and some that looked Zephyrian, all holding hands. She drew this while you were working, Thaisara explained. She says it shows her new family. Jake knelt down to Silky's level. It's beautiful, he told her. Thank you. The little alien hugged him, and Jake felt his heart melt. Whatever happened next, this moment was worth everything. Later, back in the cell area, things felt different. The barriers were still there, but guards brought Jake and his crew better food and more comfortable beds. Some of the Zephyrian engineers even stopped by to talk about technical problems and solutions. You have changed things, Thaisara told Jake during one of her visits. My crew sees humans differently now. They saw you risk your life to save them. I just did what anyone would do, Jake said. No. What anyone would do is save themselves. What you did was save everyone, even those who consider you an enemy. Maybe that's the difference between us and the war that's been going on, Jake suggested. Maybe instead of thinking about enemies, we should think about people. It is not that simple. There are those on both sides who profit from this conflict. They will not want peace. Then we'll have to be louder than they are. Thaisara laughed, a sound like musical clicking. You are very optimistic for a prisoner. I prefer to think of myself as a guest who can't leave yet. Speaking of leaving, Thaisara's expression became serious. I have been ordered to take you to the home system. The Empress wants to meet the human who saved a royal child. Is that good or bad? I do not know. The Empress is difficult to predict. She has ruled for over 300 years. She has seen much war and death. What will happen to Amy and Ben? They will come too. Your fate is connected now. That night, Jake watched the stars through his window and thought about the future. Somewhere out there, human and Zephyrian fleets were fighting and dying. Politicians on both sides were making speeches about the evil enemy that had to be destroyed. But here, on this ship, a human engineer had worked side by side with alien technicians to save everyone's lives. A small Zephyrian child drew pictures of humans and aliens as friends. A war commander questioned everything she had been taught about the enemy. Maybe peace was possible after all. The next morning brought a surprise. Tzilke appeared at Jake's cell earlier than usual, but this time she was alone. She had somehow gotten past the guards and activated the door controls. Little one, what are you doing here? Jake asked, kneeling down to her level. She chattered at him in her own language, then switched to the English words he had been teaching her. Jake, teach more words? I'd be happy to. What do you want to learn? Friend, she said carefully. How? Say, friend. You just said it. Friend. Jake, friend. Yes, Tzilke, I'm your friend. She clapped her small hands together happily. Tzilke, Jake, friends. That's right. They spent an hour together before Thaisara found them. Instead of being angry, she seemed thoughtful. She has never sought out the company of another species before, the war commander observed. Children sense things that adults sometimes miss. What do you think she senses? Safety, trust, perhaps hope. Hope for what? Hope that the future might be different than the past. As their ship traveled toward the Zephyrian home system, Jake began to understand something important. He had saved one small life in a moment of instinct and compassion, but that one act was creating ripples that spread far beyond anything he had imagined. The question now was whether those ripples would be strong enough to change the course of an entire war. Jake looked at Tzilke, who was drawing another picture, this one showing a human and a Zephyrian shaking hands while stars shined overhead. Maybe, just maybe they would be. The Zephyrian home system was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Jake pressed his face against the window of his cell, watching as they passed 3 different suns. Each sun was a different color. One yellow like Earth's sun, one red, and one that glowed with blue-white light. Planets and moons moved in complex patterns around them, and space stations hung in the distance like metal flowers. But Jake could also see the signs of war. Damaged ships limped toward repair stations. Military vessels patrolled in tight formations. Even here in the heart of Zephyrian space, everyone was ready for battle. "It's beautiful," Amy said from her cell next to his. "And heavily defended," Ben added. "Look at all those weapon platforms." Jake counted at least 50 battle stations positioned around the system. Each one was bigger than any human military base he had ever seen. They're scared, he realized. Even here in their home system, they're afraid we might attack. "Can you blame them?" Amy asked quietly. After 3 years of war, everyone's scared. Thesara appeared in the corridor outside their cells. She looked tired and worried. Zilke was with her as always, but the little one seemed upset about something. "What's wrong?" Jake asked immediately. "We have received troubling news," Thesara said. "Your human fleet is gathering near the border. Our scouts report it is the largest force humanity has ever assembled." Jake felt his stomach drop. "How large?" "Nearly 1,000 ships, led by Admiral Kate Sullivan." Jake knew that name. Admiral Sullivan had been his commanding officer before he got his own ship. She was brilliant, determined, and completely ruthless when it came to fighting the enemy. "She's planning something big," Jake said. "Yes, our intelligence suggests she has a new weapon, something that could destroy all our technology across multiple star systems." "That's impossible," Ben said. "Humans don't have that kind of technology." "Perhaps not before. But war makes people develop new ways to kill." Thysera looked directly at Jake. "What do you know about this weapon?" "Nothing," Jake said honestly. "I've been a prisoner here for weeks. I don't know what's been happening in human space." "But you know Admiral Sullivan. What would she do with such a weapon?" Jake thought about his former commander. She was a good person, but she had lost her entire family in the first Zephyrian attack on Mars. The war had made her hard, focused only on victory. She would use it, he admitted. If she thought it would end the war and save human lives, she would use it. Even if it meant killing millions of innocent Zephyrians. She doesn't see Zephyrians as innocent. To her, you're all enemies. Thysara was quiet for a moment. "Just as we see all humans as enemies." "Not all of you," Jake said, looking at Zilke. "Some of you see us differently now." "Yes, some of us do." The ship continued toward the largest planet in the system. As they got closer, Jake could see that the entire world was covered in cities. Billions of Zephyrians lived there, going about their daily lives, raising their children, hoping for peace. If Admiral Sullivan really had a weapon that could destroy all technology, those billions would die. No power, no life support, no way to survive in the vacuum of space. It would be genocide on a scale that made the rest of the war look small. "I need to contact her," Jake said suddenly. "What?" Thesara looked surprised. "Admiral Sullivan. I need to talk to her directly. If she's planning what I think she's planning, I might be able to stop it." "You would betray your own species?" "I would try to prevent mass murder. There's a difference." Thysara stared at him for a long time. Even if it meant humans would lose the war. A war isn't worth winning if you have to become a monster to do it. "And you believe Admiral Sullivan is becoming a monster?" Jake thought about the woman who had trained him, who had promoted him, who had trusted him with his first command. "I think grief and anger have made her forget who she used to be. Maybe if I remind her, she'll remember." "This is very dangerous," Thysara warned. "If my people discover I allowed you to contact the enemy fleet, they will execute me for treason. And if your admiral learns you are helping us, she may consider you a traitor too. Some things are worth the risk." Zilke had been listening to their conversation with the serious expression that children get when they know adults are talking about important things. Now she walked up to the barrier and pressed her small hand against it. "Jake, Help? She asked in careful English. I'm going to try, little one. She nodded solemnly, then said something in Zephyrian to her mother. She says you are brave, Thisara translated. She says brave people protect everyone, not just their own kind. Smart. Kid, yes she is. An hour later, Jake found himself in the ship's communication center, surrounded by Zephyrian technicians and guards. Thisara had taken an enormous risk by agreeing to this, and Jake knew it. I can reach the human fleet, one of the technicians reported, but they may not accept a transmission from a Zephyrian ship. They'll accept it if they know I'm here, Jake said. Use my command codes. The technician worked at his controls for several minutes. Finally, a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. Admiral Kate Sullivan's face looked out. At them, her expression hard and suspicious. Captain Morrison, she said, clearly shocked, we thought you were dead. I'm alive, Admiral, but we need to talk. Are you being forced to make this transmission? Are they threatening you? No, I'm contacting you voluntarily. Admiral, I know about the weapon, the quantum virus. Sullivan's face went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, and you can't use it. Do you understand how many innocents will die? Innocents? Sullivan's voice rose. There are no innocents in this war, Morrison. They started it. They killed millions of our people. Now we're going to finish it. By committing genocide. By ending this war once and for all. Jake could see the pain and rage in his former commander's eyes. She had lost everything to this conflict, and now she was willing to destroy an entire species to make it stop. Admiral, listen to me. I've been living among them for weeks. They're not monsters. They have families, children. They want peace just as much as we do. They want to destroy us. Some of them do, just like some of us want to destroy them. But not all of them. I've met Zephyrians who question this war, who want it to end. You've been brainwashed. No, I've been paying attention. Admiral, if you use that weapon, you'll be no better than the worst war criminals in human history. Is that really who you want to be? Sullivan was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than space itself. You're a traitor, Morrison. You're choosing them over your own species. I'm choosing innocent life over revenge. There's a difference. When we win this war, you'll be tried for treason. If you use that weapon, there won't be anything left worth saving. You'll have turned humanity into everything we used to fight against. Sullivan reached for something, off-screen. I've heard enough. Morrison, you have 1 hour to return to your ship and rejoin the human fleet. After that, we attack. Admiral, wait. The transmission ended. Jake stared at the empty holographic display, feeling sick. He had failed. In 1 hour, Admiral Sullivan would unleash a weapon that would kill billions of innocent people. She will not listen, Thisara observed. No, she's too hurt, too angry. She can't see past her own pain. Then my people will die. Not if I can help it. What can you do? You are one human, and she commands 1,000 ships. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he looked up at Thisara with determination in his eyes. I can give you the details of that weapon, tell you how it works, how to defend against it. Your people might be able to create a shield or find a way to stop it. That would be treason against your own species. My species is about to commit mass murder. Stopping that isn't treason. It's the right thing to do. Thisara studied his face carefully. You understand what this means? If you help us, there is no going back. Your people will consider you an enemy forever. Then I'll have to live with that. Why? Why risk everything for people you barely know? Jake looked at the Zephyrian technicians around him, thinking about the engineers who had worked beside him to save the ship, about the doctors who had healed his leg, about a small child who drew pictures of humans and aliens as friends. Because sometimes you have to choose between loyalty to your people and loyalty to what's right. And right now, what's right is making sure Tsilki grows up in a universe where her species still exists. Thisara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft with something like awe. You would sacrifice everything for my daughter's future? For every child's future. human, Zephyrian, whatever species might exist someday. They deserve a chance to grow up in a better universe than the one we're giving them. Thaisara walked over to her console and began typing rapidly. Then we had better work quickly. You have less than an hour to teach us everything you know about quantum viruses. Jake rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Outside, the human fleet was preparing to destroy an entire species. But here in this room, a human and a group of aliens were working together to save billions of lives. It might not be enough, but it was the right thing to do. And sometimes, that was all that mattered. The Empress of the Zephyrians was not what Jake had expected. She was ancient, her crystalline shell dulled with age, but her eyes held the wisdom of centuries. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had ruled an entire species through wars, plagues, and the rise and fall of civilizations. Jake stood in the center of a vast throne room, flanked by Amy and Ben. Hundreds of Zephyrian nobles surrounded them, their shells gleaming in the strange alien light. At the far end of the room, the Empress sat on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal. But Jake's attention was focused on the small figure beside the throne. Zilke stood next to her grandmother, wearing tiny ceremonial armor that sparkled like starlight. She waved at Jake when she saw him, and he couldn't help but smile back. "You are the human who saved my great-granddaughter," the Empress said. Her voice was translated by devices throughout the room, but Jake could hear the original clicking and chirping underneath. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Do you know what you have done?" Jake wasn't sure how to answer that. "I protected a child from harm. You have created a crisis that threatens the very foundation of our society," the Empress continued. "By your actions, you have forced us to question everything we believe about humans. My advisors are divided. Some say you are a hero who deserves the highest honors. Others say you are a clever spy who has manipulated us with false kindness. I'm just someone who couldn't watch a child get hurt." "Just someone," the Empress repeated. "Yet your just someone actions have prevented what your people would call genocide. The quantum virus weapon has been neutralized." Jake felt a surge of relief. The information he had provided had worked. Billions of lives had been saved. "However," the Empress continued, "this has come at great cost. Admiral Sullivan's fleet attacked anyway, even without their superweapon. The battle was terrible. Many died on both sides." Jake's heart sank. "I'm sorry, I tried to stop it." "You tried, and in doing so, you committed treason against your own species. You chose to save Zephyrian lives over human military advantage, chose to prevent mass murder." "Yes, you did." The Empress leaned forward on her throne. "This presents me with a problem. Ancient law states that one who saves a royal child may ask for any reasonable reward. What would you ask for, human?" Jake had been thinking about this moment for days. He knew what he wanted, but he also knew it was probably impossible. "I want peace," he said simply. "Peace? I want formal negotiations between our species. I want this war to end." The Empress clicked in what Jake had learned was Zephyrian laughter. "You ask for something that is not mine to give alone. Peace requires agreement from both sides. Then I'm asking you to take the first step." "And you believe your people will respond favorably to such an offer?" Jake thought about Admiral Sullivan, about the hatred he had seen in her eyes. "Some will, others won't. But we have to try." "Very well," the Empress said. "I will order my fleets to cease offensive operations. I will send envoys to your government with an offer of negotiation. You will serve as our ambassador representing both species in these talks." "Me? I'm not a diplomat." "No. You are something more valuable. You are someone both sides can trust, even if they do not like what you have to say." Jake looked around, the throne room. Every Zephyrian noble was staring at him, waiting to see what he would say. The weight of two civilizations seemed to rest on his shoulders. "I accept," he said. The Empress nodded. "Then it is done. You will be given a ship and a crew. Your friends will accompany you as your staff. The negotiations will begin immediately." As the formal ceremony continued, Jake noticed Thaisara standing near the back of the room. She looked proud but also sad. When their eyes met, she nodded slightly and he understood. This was goodbye. Later, as Jake prepared to leave for the negotiations, Thaisara came to see him one last time. Zilke was with her, carrying a small bag of her belongings. She wants to give you something, Thaisara said. Zilke reached into her bag and pulled out a small crystal sculpture. It showed a human figure and a Zephyrian figure standing together, reaching toward the stars. I made it, Zilke said in careful English, for Jake, for friend. It's beautiful, Jake said, kneeling down to accept the gift. Thank you. Jake come back? Visit Zilke? Jake looked at Thaisara, who smiled sadly. If the negotiations are successful, there will be cultural exchanges. You could visit. I'd like that very much, Jake told the little girl. Zilke hugged him tightly. Jake, best friend. Jake, save everyone. You saved me too, little one. You taught me that friendship is possible even between enemies. As they prepared to part, Thaisara pulled Jake aside for a private conversation. I have something to confess, she said quietly. What? When I first decided to keep you alive, it was only because you saved Zilke. But now, I realize you have saved something much more important. What's that? Hope. You have given both our species hope that the future can be different than the past. The negotiations might fail, Jake warned. There's a lot of anger on both sides. Perhaps. But now we know it is possible for humans and Zephyrians to work together, to care for each other's children, to choose peace over revenge. That knowledge will survive even if the talks fail, and Zilke will grow up knowing that humans can be friends, not just enemies. Yes. And perhaps her generation will do better than ours. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Zilke play with Amy and Ben. The little alien had taught them some Zephyrian games, and they were all laughing together. There's something else, Thaisara said suddenly. What? The Empress has made me an offer. After the negotiations, regardless of how they turn out, I could request reassignment to the cultural exchange program. I could work with humans and Zephyrians who want to build bridges between our species. That sounds perfect for you. It would mean leaving the military, giving up my rank, my position, starting over. Is that what you want? Thaisara looked at her daughter, who was now teaching Ben how to make the clicking sounds of Zephyrian laughter. I want Zilke to grow up in a universe where she can have friends of any species, where she never has to choose between loyalty to her people and doing what's right. If working for peace can help create that universe, then yes, that's what I want. Then I hope to see you again soon, Jake said. As do I. The negotiations took place on a neutral space station at the border between human and Zephyrian space. They were difficult, often frustrating, and several times came close to complete failure. Representatives from both sides brought centuries of mistrust and pain to the table, but slowly, carefully, progress was made. Jake found himself serving as translator not just of languages, but of cultures and emotions. When human negotiators spoke of individual rights, he helped Zephyrians understand the concept. When Zephyrians talked about the sacred nature of the young, he helped humans see beyond their fear of the alien enemy. The breakthrough came when Zilke herself appeared, at the negotiations brought by Thaisara as part of a cultural presentation. The little alien stood before the assembled diplomats from both species and spoke in both languages. I am Zephyrian, she said carefully. Jake is human, but we are friends. We are family. Why can't all be family? The room was completely silent. Then, one by one, the negotiators began to speak again. But this time they talked about children instead of weapons, about futures instead of past grievances, about the kind of universe they wanted to leave behind. 3 months later, the Galactic Peace Accords were signed. Jake stood on the observation deck of the neutral station, watching as human and Zephyrian ships departed together for the first joint patrol of the border regions. The war wasn't completely over. There were still extremists on both sides who preferred fighting to peace. But the killing had stopped, and that was a beginning. Remarkable, said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Thyssera approaching. She wore civilian clothes now, having left the military to head the new interspecies cultural exchange program. What's remarkable? One small act of kindness, and look what it has become. She gestured at the ships outside. Humans and Zephyrians, working together. It wasn't just me. You chose to keep me alive. Silky chose to trust me. Your engineers chose to work with me during the storm. The Empress chose to listen. Everyone made choices that led to this. Perhaps. But it started with you protecting my daughter. Jake smiled. Speaking of Zilke, where is she? In the education center, teaching human children how to speak Zephyrian and learning mathematics from them in return. She's growing up fast. Yes. And she's growing up in a universe where friendship across species is normal, not extraordinary. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the mixed fleet disappear into hyperspace. Jake thought about the long journey that had brought them here, from that moment when he threw himself between a falling beam and a scared alien child. I've been thinking, Thyssera said suddenly. About what? About something Silky said during the negotiations. About being family. What about it? She was right. We have become family, haven't we? You, me, her. We're not related by blood or species, but we're connected by something stronger. Love, Jake said simply. Yes, love. As they watched the stars, Jake realized that he had found something he hadn't been looking for. He had saved one small life, and in doing so,